Sanbonani. And we're live. Good evening and welcome to this reading for the new moon in Cancer, which we will be experiencing this Wednesday, the 25th of June, 2025. Mina Makhosi Nomabutho, and this is Sangoma Society, where we demystify the astral and the ancestral. And we do these readings in the capacity of Ubunyanga Bethu. African astrology is read collectively. Masi bheka okwenyanga ebunyangeni sibheka ukuthi wena njengelunga lomphakathi, what should you be aware of that is happening at this moment in time, how it will affect how you relate to others around you and the plans that you have and what you can lean into at that time. For us here at Sangoma Society, doing the moon readings began not so much by choice, but as many things do edlozini ngenxa yokugula ukuthi over the course of about a year, I experienced really debilitating migraines that happened with every full moon. And after a year of being in and out of hospital, I then was able to connect the dots with the help of the medical field. You're able to, okay, this thing is not affecting me via like physical medical reasons, but they said look into it spiritually. And when I did, ngathola ukuthi how kukhona imilayezo efikayo during the time of the full moon that are not for me to keep to myself, but something that I should share with the collective in time with these transits as they happen. And as soon as I started to do that, ngalulama ekuguleni, and it's since then expanded to not just the full moon, but new moons as well, retrograde readings, the actual year readings, and we do individual readings for your year-to-year solar returns. And also, we have an offering of izinto ezibhekane, excuse me. Yo! 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 Hey! Oi! Oi! Hey! Makhosi. As the years have gone on, what has happened is that we have been given a so that we do with each new moon and full moon work that is centered around building a relationship with yourself as the foundation to building this relationship with your ancestors. And over time, through doing that work myself, ngizithola ngisakhula edlozini. And as always, for me, sharing space nabanye abanemfiso yokukhula edlozini is always a privilege. And as such, I would like to express my gratitude to you for being here with us as we go into this reading. It is a privilege to be in your presence. Now, looking at the transits that are currently affecting us. Before we get to this new moon, let's talk about a few things that have happened recently. Mars moved into Virgo this time last week. Yo! So, he! Yo! Oi! Of course. Out of Leo, where Mars was feeling really active, really activated and outside, and into Virgo. So we had that really explosive weekend, the one before this one, the previous one. And they were, Mars was in the final degrees of Leo. It was giving like there were a few squares over the course of that weekend. There was a little bit of tension, and we really had to watch our words, right? And then or we may have just been feeling those feelings and like really centering ourselves in the experience of our emotions, negative emotions, especially like anger, like frustration, really putting ourselves in the middle of that and like seeing where people have us messed up, right? When we moved from when Mars moved out of Leo and into Virgo last week, Tuesday, what it has done is set the scene for us to take quantifiable action, structured action. Like, yes, we have been realizing things. Yes, we have had to consider certain things about what it is that's frustrating us, right, with respect to our relationships or our lives or the areas that Mars does touch with stagnancy, with pace of things. Now there is room for or an atmosphere that encourages quantifiable action, that encourages strategic action, that it speaks to implementation. That's where we are now. It is time to not just act, because action was already there, movement was already there, but we're supported in now not just continuing at the same pace. There's an opportunity where you can look back at what you saw in the last quarter and say, okay, cool, this was working, this wasn't working, and this is how I'm going to change my approach going forward and put a plan into place. And it's going to be very well supported. Keeping in mind that as we move towards Virgo season, again, in the year reading, we did touch on how this is really that between the last equinox and the next one, these 6 months, we really just want to be getting our house in order. That is what the stars have aligned for, and that is what we should really be taking advantage of right now. Getting those passports in order, your driver's licenses, your whatever identity documents, your because like there's things that are moving here that we're still going to talk about in the course of this reading, specifically like Uranus and Gemini, where we just we might not know where we're landing in 12 months. So what you want to do is whatever administrative stuff needs to be done, get it done now before the end of September. But right now, with this Mars, very well supported. What like make those submissions, do that stuff, right? And as we proceed through the reading, you're going to see how yo, Marcos, wait, yo, the accompanying transits really support this frame of mind. Yo, oh, Marcos. Of course. Um, and a big thing that really happened for us recently is the solstice this past weekend. On over the course of Saturday, we had the longest night of the year here in the southern hemisphere, and that would have been the shortest night of the year in the northern hemisphere. But essentially, we have crossed the mid mark for the year, but also we have transitioned through that portal of change. And as we go into this new moon, it is like the first new moon of the second half of the year. We are being given a new opportunity, and not just a renewed opportunity, but again, referencing the year reading that we did earlier this year, we said no matter how hard the first and second quarter are, the mid mark is going to give you reprieve. This is that time. It is not coming without its own revelations. The dream space is dream spacing. Okay, you're seeing things. You're seeing things right now, and Uranus has been moving and is moving in its final degree out of out of Taurus into Gemini. And as it does that, there's like unexpected movement. It's a planet of unexpected things, moving into its most revolutionary station. There has been also that movement. We're still in the early degrees of Neptune's transition into Aries, which again is also a revolutionary station. But again, revelations not our dream space is not a place of deep metaphor, like Neptune in Pisces, where the dreams would have felt really deep and very difficult to decipher. Now you're likely dreaming dreams that you can kind of see what it's saying. And if you're not seeing what it's saying, if you're not like feeling a sense of clarity, I encourage you to journal. Journal your dreams, write them down. You will be able to revisit these later, when you're coming to the end of the year, looking back at this time of the year. And now you have some perspective, a depth of field when looking at what these dreams were trying to say. And remember also that not every dream you're dreaming is about something that's happening right now, or guidance about something that is top of mind. Some of the dreams that we're having, that we have as people, are your subconscious trying to piece together the patterns that your conscious mind hasn't yet become cognizant of, right? And they can be playing out different possibilities and variables within that, right? So when you are journaling your dreams, you're kind of building that bridge between your conscious and your subconscious mind, and training your mind to recognize these patterns. And it's very empowering. It brings you into a place of agency with respect to when you've had a practice over a period of time. Mawuzohlola or emntwini athi kuwe, imibono yakho ithanda ukuba kanje, and your dreams tend to mean this or that, then you're in a position to confirm or deny. You have greater agency to participate within that conversation, and you can go to the next level of what that conversation can be for you, right? So believe the things you're seeing in the astral at the moment, to the extent that you document them. and give yourself an opportunity to interrogate them so that you can act in accordance with whatever guidance might be coming through there, or you can at least begin to recognize how you may or may not receive guidance in your dream space. Tomorrow, we have a really big day in terms of transits for the year. We know that Jupiter moving into Cancer was highly anticipated, and now we have Jupiter going to Kazimi Cancer. So we're in Cancer season now. So that means the sun is in Cancer. When we have a Kazimi, it means that a planet is going to be in the heart of the sun on that day. So it's a conjunction with the sun, basically. So the energy of the day is going to emanate the essence of that transit. Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, for starters, which is generally considered to be a really good thing, generally. Your own natal placements will say how you're experiencing that, right? Because again, Jupiter is a planet that magnifies. It is the planet of expansion. Many people view it as a benefic, a benefactor. And Cancer is the most maternal placement in the zodiac. It is ruled by the moon. It is deep emotion. It is that maternal love. So when we're seeing this Kazimi in Cancer, for me, something that I don't think I've heard spoken about is how much Jupiter in Cancer is going to highlight to us our mother wound. Okay. And if that is something that you, I think we all have a mother wound. Guys, our mothers can try their best. We're all gonna carry what we carry, but it's different for different people, right? um Now, if you find yourself um questioning deeply your relationships, and as this new moon is generally going to be doing, right? It is going to be highlighting relationship, community, and that again also has a lot to do with the transits that we're going into, like Uranus moving into Gemini, the new moon, etc. How we show up in our relationships, where we set our boundaries in our relationship, how we understand how much is enough to give in our relationships is so deeply determined by yo, yo, Marcos, the relationships that we have with our mothers. And this primary relationship is one that shapes our understanding of what is right and wrong with how we show up in the world. And when we have fractures in that relationship, as is possible in any relationship, those fractures can become magnified in our relationships with other people. And we might not see those because it's obviously a very sacred relationship. And very often we are not comfortable with interrogating that relationship and what it means and what it doesn't mean, and, you know, and how it's shaped us, and the undercurrents. And there's so much taboo around what we can and cannot say about our mothers, right? But you see here, this new moon is going to give some glaring um, observations on what it is in our mother wound that is causing us to show up in the ways that we're showing up in our relationships. But also, at the same time, um, this is a new moon. So we have both the sun and the moon in the same sign. Oi! Makhosi. Makhosi. So when the moon joins the sun in Cancer on the 25th, what is going to happen is that, again, the moon is in its home sign, so it's very comfortable there. Um, these transits are not going to feel harsh, they're not going to feel heavy. You might feel like you're being pulled into it. And to that, I say surrender. Wherever Cancer is coming up, I'm always encouraging surrender. The crab is this mysterious creature. Unkalankala. Inkalankala. Esintwini unonkala kuthiwa uhamba le nale, going side to side, wenza ngamabomu. Uhamba ngazuthi akazazi ukuthi uyaphi, wenza ngamabomu. It is not by accident that the mistakes you have been made. It is not perchance that your missteps have been what they have been. It is divine intention. And this season is going to illuminate that so beautifully. You know, the thing with Jupiter in Cancer, that deep desire to create, right? So a lot of people have warned that, listen, if you're not trying to get pregnant right now, just understand that it is a fertile time. But that creative energy, that Jupiter has, combined with that maternal energy that Cancer has, is not only about conception in that way. It is also about self-conception. It is also about how we see ourselves and how we are able to conceive of ourselves, perceive ourselves, like to truly now ukuzibona, you understand, and to begin clocking these patterns, recognizing the depth of who we are and what we are, because often, not just often, but in recent years, as these kinds of conversations have happened. And in the last year and more, with Jupiter in Gemini, what we had was a lot of superficial conversations around certain topics and not enough community going as deep as certain things are required. And Jupiter in Cancer gives us the yo. Makhosi. 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 Gives us the atmosphere to build room for more depth about self-conception and like, let's deep it, actually. Let's deep what we're here to do. Let's understand the sacred relationship between mother and child and how maybe this is not your first incarnation. Actually, it's 2025. The likelihood of you having your first incarnation on Earth at this point is like, my God, probably less than 10%. You've had a few lives before this one, and you didn't choose your mother by accident. And what is it that this relationship has brought into your frame of reference with respect to your highest purpose in this life? Because that's the springboard that your highest self chose. That's what the highest iteration of who you are thought you absolutely needed as a point of departure in your journey in this life. So now, this transit over the next couple of days is here to illuminate that. And when you find yourself, ubalabala, really going like reflecting on how, on things that have happened in past relationships, as you will find yourself doing, it is not just superficial reminiscing, you know like, look at yourself. Are you a lover girl? Look at yourself. Are you delusional? Look at yourself. Have you been lying to yourself about something? Have you been in denial about something? What's this thing that keeps on replicating? Do you know? And where can you tie it to perhaps whom you believe yourself to be based on your understanding of self as a result of umzali? I took a year away from this space. I took a year not being Imsam. When we had our retreat last year with the astrological new year of 2024, I thought that I was ready for it. And shame, there were things that had happened prior to that I felt, I had done the work around. But in the process of that retreat, when we gather, we magnify, we intensify the lens through which we can see certain things, right? That's another thing with African ways of healing, is that it is collective. It is not just about us individually. It is about how we show up in community, but community is also showing up for us in the process of our own healing, right? We're holding space for one another. And when we are able to perceive ourselves through that lens, we can see things that we weren't anticipating. And for me, so much was revealed about how whom I thought I was, and whom I had attributed certain aspects of myself to. And it really was so much to do with that mother wound, and really having to take the time away to go as deep into that as possible, and allowing it to take the time it took to come to terms with the truth of what it all means. Because how you show up in the world has got so much to do with that relationship. You you cannot over attribute its influence on you. And the thing with things we ignore, they exist in the shadow. And what it is with a relationship like the one between mother and child is that because it's supposed to be sacred, because the socialization around the relationship is that it is taboo to interrogate it, it is taboo to speak on it in any way. There's so much that ends up within the shadow. Yo, boy, Makhosi. Yo, Makhosi. And where, Makhosi. And where our conscious mind refuses to turn its attention, what begins to happen is that we start covering those shadows with pictures and stories about what is the thing that lurks behind them, the thing that we don't want to see. We package it in a story that we can live with. And what happens is that life is an unescapable truth. And as we live, we act out our shadows from our subconscious mind. That's our factory setting, right? So when we're acting out this self in the world and showing up in the world and so unconscious about why we show up in the ways that we do, about what it is that influences us in the way that it does, because we're refusing to tear down this visage, the story that we've painted about these sacred relationships, and delve into that shadow and integrate it and really, really accept the truth of what we come from. The truth of what we come from is showing up in our relationships, is showing up in the patterns that reveal themselves in our relationships, right? So you've got, say, a pattern of betrayal. Like you're always experiencing betrayal in friendship, in business, and romance, and hiri hiri. But you say that, you've got a great like relationship with your family, with your mother, etc., etc. But then when you actually have to sit down now and um, go into those blank moments, those blank spaces in your memory, because that's another thing that happens with that relationship and how it connects with childhood trauma, is that we get lots of blanks in our relationship, because those blanks are those shadows, those memories that we don't want to confront, those memories that give us a window into the aspects of this relationship that exist within the shadow, right? That are difficult for us to come to terms with. And when we sit with the truth of what those things are, those experiences, those isolated events, those patterns that play up in these relationships, then now we start to see, oh, this is actually what I've been gravitating towards. I'm not perhaps just experiencing blind betrayal. What is actually happening is that perhaps there's um, a resentment um, in the relationship I have with my mother, and because that resentment is con is familiar to me, and my subconscious is conditioned uh, into recognizing resentment as familiar. And what is familiar to us is what we consider safe, is what we then label as love, right? And when we then experience it out in the world, we gravitate towards it. And then we have these experiences that replay these patterns of the thing that's in the shadow, right? So, in respect to our relationships and how our mother wound would affect that, in this example that we have been using with respect to resentment, it would be, if you're sensing that sense of resentment in a person, you're not recognizing it as resentment, you're recognizing it as familiar, and familiar feels like love to your child mind, to the subconscious, to that space that you don't go to. And so you gravitate towards it. And then you nourish and nurture these relationships, but they exist on that basis. You don't know that you're resented. You're just working with what is familiar, what you understand as love. And then perhaps then that betrayal shows up. And that betrayal now shows up, and you're like, where did this come from? It came out of nowhere. The truth is, you were gravitating to resentment. It's the same way with something that's very familiar to everyone, perhaps in pop psychology, where we talk about how if a child grows up in an abusive home, they're more likely to end up in abusive relationships, like abusive marriages, abusive romantic relationships, where you even have, amantombazana athi indoda engakushayi ayikuthandi. It's literally coming from what is familiar is what you label as love. And if you have not brought it up into your conscious mind to be interrogated, you're going to um, keep replaying those patterns. So, what this new moon is giving us the opportunity to do, and being aided very deeply by tomorrow's Jupiter Kazemi in Cancer, is an opportunity to gain perspective on those relationships, how we're showing up in our relationships. And when we recognize these patterns, when we see these patterns, what we ought to do is lean into that. It's gonna feel big, hey? You're gonna feel it. Um, and it's gonna go deep. It's gonna go deep. Remember, the crab is an interesting animal in terms of the water signs. It lives both in and out of water. And when it is in water, it can be in very fast moving water, it can be in very deep water, extremely deep water. And another thing about a crab that I find very interesting in terms of evolutionary science is that so many animals evolve into crabs. We've got 8 different genuses that have eventually evolved into being crabs. You know, everything is always moving towards becoming a crab. We all collectively can say we have mothers. You cannot be born and not have a mother. So where the sign illuminates um, is something that is a shared experience, is very collective. And there's something about community that this new moon highlights that, again, I want to bring back to the crab, specifically the hermit crab, and how the hermit crab, when it finds a new shell, does not simply say, oh, perfect, here's a new shell, I'm abandoning mine. Instead, they call each other together and line up side by side. So a crab just slightly smaller than this crab that's found a new shell that it can grow into will come next to it to be able to take the shell that it is discarding. And down the line, each shell that is discarded will be taken by the next person, again, highlighting community and how we make each other possible in the ways in which we hold space for each other. Which brings me to this aspect, this transit we have coming up, which is Uranus entering Gemini on the 7th of July, which then means we are currently in the last days, the final degrees of Uranus in Taurus. And we know that when we see the final degrees, a planet in the final degrees of a sign, there's a lot of urgency. It really peaks, like it can be a little frantic. Yo! Yo! Oh! Of course. And for me, this, oh, of course, Uranus and Taurus. Oh, Makhosini, you ngeke. Wozindlondlo ey'nkulu. Uy. Uy, Makhosi. Uranus and Taurus and how it plays out with the questions of home and how it plays out in terms of war. Is ugly. Is ugly. So that's a lot of tension. It's a lot of you've seen what's happening in the Middle East now with Iran also finding itself being pulled into this tension, and just how way Makos Makos. This is all happening on the proverbial eve of Uranus moving into Gemini, and how Uranus in Gemini is its most revolutionary station, but also the one in which we've seen the greatest wars. So we've seen Uranus in Gemini was the American Revolution, which was we were seeing here on our side. I didn't actually check what we were seeing, but I know that we were having revolutionary wars of our own here in Africa. But unfortunately for us, in the last time that Uranus was in Gemini, we got dragged into the Second World War, right? Which actually began while Uranus was still in Taurus and then continued through Uranus in Gemini. What was awful for us the last time Uranus was in Gemini is that apartheid was ratified in South Africa. That happened in 1948. So let me speak to just our South African context for a second here and say how imperative it is that we get really serious about where we stand with our political ideology, because we have a lot of separatist movements that are being floated about that could be really, really dangerous for the future of this country. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. History is made by people, individuals who make choices that have collective impact, right? And as we find ourselves in these conversations, let us remember that there is an energy that this transit is carrying on its own. And again, it speaks to community, right? It's ugly. It's not cute. Uranus and Taurus is that concept of home, land becomes a question, right? We've had that over the last 10 years. But now when it goes into Gemini, right? Like some people want to take action about it. Some people want to do something about it. Is the thing they want to do something about something that we think we want to be participating in, or what? And do we need to have another conversation where we say, oh, the ruling party tried to float, something about that, a policy about that, but we didn't see it. We didn't, it received public opposition. When the ruling party was saying um, they want to make it illegal for foreigners to buy land in South Africa, that was opposed 10 years ago. Policy died. But today, we're looking at a reality where even here in our villages, we have more and more foreigners owning land and property than locals. In Cape Town, there's an accommodation scarcity for local professionals who are outpriced. The whole lifestyle in Cape Town was always that you live and work in the CBD, it's a walkable city, right? Now you can't afford that. Now you have to drive in traffic. Now you have to live in Parow, work in the Cape Town CBD. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense? Oh, but it's, foreign direct investment, people are going to they made the Airbnbs. Now look, and we say that, oh, we just didn't see it. Oh, what is inspiring your ideology? Why do you believe the things you believe? If you remember in the year reading, at the top of the year, we said how this year, this entire year, is a masterclass in the interrogation of personal political ideology. Because again, Uranus is going to go into Gemini now for about 5 months. And then in November, it is going to go back into Taurus. And when that happens, that is really, you've heard me speaking, if you've been watching this, you've heard me speaking about November 2025. If you've been with me for the last, like, any more than 2 years, November 2025 has been a chat. One of the things that happens in November 2025 is this Uranus retrograde back into Taurus, and it might not be very peaceful. Okay, because it's also that Scorpio season going to be coinciding with the uh, alliances made in the Scorpio eclipse of 2024, which just bad news, really not smart. No, Scorpio full moon of 2024, May 2024, which was just, bad time to be making alliances. Those alliances are going to be falling apart in November. Just a lot of stuff, right? So again, this is a year that is giving us a nice preview of what is to come over the next 10 years, because the Uranus is another one of the slow horses of the revolution, and all of these slow horses have been making massive transitions over the course of the last 18 months. And by the time we hit the first quarter of 2026, we will have all of our big collective major planets in their most revolutionary station. And over the course of 2026 and 2027, those planets are going to begin aspecting each other in the sky, which means this is the beginning of the end of life as we know it. Things are it's never going to be like this again. Whatever we thought we were working towards, whatever dreams we had when we were kids and we saw how adults were living, that's not going to be what we get. Okay. Um, and I'm speaking to my age mates, I'm speaking to millennials when I say that, because I think we've just been waiting for our walkable neighborhood life. We've just been waiting for our turnkey life in the suburbs. And this thing of constantly going, it's really not happening for us, and grieving that without end. Like, can we do the grief work now and get through it? Because life needs to go on. Like, time is moving, okay? And this Uranus into Gemini is really going to call into question who we are in the context of community, how we show up, and how we show up very personally. Because again, how we show up in a community is based on our internalized um, ideology. And if we're not interrogating those things, we're going to have issues, we're going to have problems. And for us, we will be using pivoting into purpose to do that work this year, this with this new moon. Pivoting into purpose does run from solstice to solstice. And with this solstice, we begin from the top the curriculum for pivoting into purpose. And these are a series of guided meditations through which you connect with your own ancestors and receive practical, direct guidance of what action to take, in which order, and see how purpose unfolds for you when you do that. For me, it has led me down paths I could never have anticipated, uh, but find myself so deeply grateful for having experienced. I would also encourage anyone who finds themselves challenged by the reality that the recent transits in the second quarter have really brought that conversation about where you stand with your ancestral calling into a place that you can no longer hide from. Pivoting into purpose can give you that direction, that clarity of, oh, okay, this is where I'm supposed to go. Do you know? Um, Thina la ekhaya sithanda ukuyihlanganisa nenhlambuluko, inhlambuluko insebenzo yokuthi sicela iy'ndlela, ukuvulelwa iy'ndlela zokuthi where am I supposed to go? Can I please have that revelation now of seeing the road ahead, when we are now in a place where we're prepared to accept this ancestral calling. In Tlambuluko, we really encourage that one only does it when they're like, okay, I'm ready to go. Because I'd say it's like a year tops before you'll find yourself usephehlweni usuthwasa. For some people, it's a matter of days, some people, it's months. But a year is about the, I'd say, if you want to plan it, Guti, within the next year, I want to get this thing over and done with. Qhuba kuyo, qhuba kuyo bakithi. But as for me and this house, we will be going into pivoting into purpose with this new moon, as is our new moon ritual. Because again, the new moon is the time when we make our plans. The new moon is the time when we seek a vision for what is to come and set intentions and move forward in that intention. And this new moon is very much that. What revelations it will inevitably bring are revelations that I encourage you once again to surrender to. A quick, easy way to encourage surrender for you. Again, I think I said it at the top of this conversation, but I will reiterate it now, is journaling. Journal, journal, journal. Not just your dreams, but also your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. Daily journaling will give you so much clarity about what you're ruminating on, where you're stuck, and your patterns, right? If introspection and a desire to know yourself is something that is material to you, journaling is just the very beginning, right? And in the interest of spiritual hygiene, with the new moon, bandla phalazani. Phalazani. Help yourself. Uphalaze. And in the interest of moving forward in your ancestral journey, join me in pivoting into purpose, and we will take the conversation further in there. As for today, it has been a privilege to be in your presence. Yo! Makukhanye, kube sekuba kuhle. Sithi makhosi kuleyo ndawo.